You're parked outside a house you've never been to before. The address came from a guy who got it from a guy. The windows are blacked out with garbage bags and duct tape. There's a mattress on the front lawn, soaked through with something you don't want to identify. You knock 3 times. A kid answers, and by kid you mean a 25-year-old who looks 40, sunken cheeks, pupils the size of dimes, picking at a scab on his forearm like it owes him money. You hand over $60. He hands you a gram. This is the bottom. This is where Albuquerque's meth economy starts. $60, palm to palm, on a porch that smells like cat piss and acetone. The product you're holding is maybe 40% pure, cooked in a trailer or a bathtub by someone who learned chemistry from a YouTube comment section. There's chili powder in it, actual chili powder. A local cook called Cap'n Cook thought that was his signature move, his brand. His real name is Jesse Pinkman, a dropout from J.P. Wynn High School who couldn't pass sophomore chemistry and now cooks methamphetamine for a living. Badly. This is the product the street runs on, and the street doesn't care about purity. The street cares about price. The guys who sell it for Jesse, Badger, Skinny Pete, a kid named Christian Ortega who goes by Combo, they're standing on corners in the South Valley and the war zone, pockets full of dime bags, no guns, no backup. Skinny Pete works the parking lot of a halfway house. Badger sets up on a bench near the courthouse, which is about as smart as robbing a bank next to a police station. They make a few $100s a day, maybe 1,000 on a good week. Enough for rent, enough for their own supply, barely enough to matter. Combo is the one who dies first, shot on a street corner by an 11-year-old boy named Tomas Cantillo. The kid rides up on a bicycle, pulls a pistol, and puts a bullet in Combo's chest. Combo tries to run, gets about 20 feet before his legs stop working. Bleeds out on the pavement. Broad daylight. Nobody calling an ambulance for a while because this is the part of Albuquerque where gunshots don't always mean 911. Tomas doesn't work for Jesse. He works for a pair of rival dealers operating under a man named Gustavo Fring, who owns a fried chicken restaurant and half the meth distribution network in the American Southwest. But you don't know that yet. Nobody at the bottom knows who's really at the top. You just know your dealer's friend is dead and you can't score this week. So you start thinking, you've got a connection, you know where to get product. Maybe you start buying in bulk, an 8-ball here, a 1/4 ounce there. Maybe you sell a little to cover what you use. Maybe you sell a little more. And then one morning you wake up and realize you haven't used in 3 days because you've been too busy counting cash. You're not a customer anymore. You're Jesse Pinkman, or something like him. Cooking in a 1975 Fleetwood Bounder RV parked in the desert outside Albuquerque, the generator humming, the ventilation non-existent, your eyes burning from the phosphine gas you're pretending isn't there. Your partner is a 50-year-old high school chemistry teacher with lung cancer. His name is Walter White. He wears tighty-whities and a respirator, and he's the most terrifying person you've ever met, though you haven't figured that out yet. The RV reeks. Sweat, pseudoephedrine, the sweet chemical bite of methanol cooking off. You're using the Nagai method, reducing pseudoephedrine with red phosphorus and hydroiodic acid. It's the backyard method, the biker method, the method that gets you product in the 70% purity range if you're lucky. Walt's product comes out higher, much higher, but it's still small time. You're cooking a pound or 2 at a go, selling through your crew, dodging the DEA agent who happens to be your partner's brother-in-law. His name is Hank Schrader. He's ASAC at the Albuquerque field office. He collects minerals and drinks Schraderbräu, and he's been hunting a cook called Heisenberg for longer than he'd like to admit. He's sitting across from Walt at family barbecues. To move real weight, you need a distributor. And the distributor who finds you is Tuco Salamanca, nephew of Hector Salamanca, soldier in the Juarez cartel, a man who snorts his own product off a Bowie knife and beat one of his own associates to death with his bare fists for saying the wrong thing at the wrong time. Tuco pays $35,000 for 2 pounds of Walt's meth. Then he pays another $35,000 as compensation for nearly killing Jesse. This is the going rate for entry into the next tier of the food chain. Your face rearranged and a duffel bag of cash. Tuco wants more product. He wants exclusivity. He wants you cooking in his kitchen, under his roof, under his watch. and you learn something that every person in this chain eventually learns. The moment you become valuable to someone above you, you become their property. Tuco doesn't negotiate. He dictates. He snorts a line off the tip of his knife and grins, and you can see every one of his teeth, and they're the wrong color. Tuco dies on the 2nd of March, somewhere in a desert shack near the Mexican border, shot by Hank Schrader. This is the DEA's first big win. It's also the moment the vacuum above you forms. Tuco is gone. His distribution network is headless. And you, if you're Walt, if you're climbing, you start looking for the next rung. The next rung is a man who smells like fried chicken batter and bleach. Gustavo Fring. Chilean. Maybe. Nobody's sure where he actually came from, and the few people who tried to find out are buried in the desert or dissolved in acid. Gus owns Los Pollos Hermanos, a fast food chain with 14 locations across the Southwest. He's a donor to the DEA's charitable fund. He shakes hands with law enforcement at fundraising dinners. He smiles a smile that never reaches the orbits of his eyes. Underneath the Lavanderia Brillante, an industrial laundry he also owns, Gus built a super lab. $8 million in construction costs, designed by a chemist named Gail Boetiker, built by German engineers led by Werner Ziegler, who Gus had killed when the job was done because loose ends are not a concept Gus tolerates. The lab is 60 feet underground, climate-controlled, ventilated, equipped with everything a world-class chemist could ask for. It can produce 200 pounds of methamphetamine per week. This is where you stop being a cook and start being an employee. Walt switches methods, abandons pseudoephedrine entirely, goes to phenylacetone synthesis, the P2P method, using methylamine as the precursor. This is old-school cartel chemistry, the biker crank formula from the 1970s, except Walt does something nobody else can do. He resolves the racemic mixture, separates the D-methamphetamine from the L-isomer. The product comes out 99.1% pure, and it's blue, a pale, crystalline blue that becomes its own brand, its own legend, a color that DEA agents across 3 states learn to recognize on sight. Gus pays Walt $15 million a year for his services. Flat rate, no negotiation. Walt cooks, Gail assists, Mike Ehrmantraut, former cop, current fixer, a man who can disassemble a crime scene the way a watchmaker disassembles a movement, handles security. The meth ships out in Los Pollos Hermanos trucks, hidden in buckets of fry batter marked with ultraviolet stamps, distributed across a network that stretches from New Mexico to the Czech Republic through a Madrigal electromotive executive named Lydia Rodart Quayle, who orders chamomile tea with stevia and has people murdered with the same flat administrative affect she uses to approve shipping manifests. You're making money now. Real money. The kind that doesn't fit in a shoebox. The kind that fills a storage unit. But you're also a cog. Gus controls the supply chain. Gus controls distribution. Gus controls you. And the thing about Gus is that he's been doing this longer than you've been alive. He watched his business partner, Max Arciniega, get shot in the head by Hector Salamanca on the orders of Don Eladio Fuente back in 1989 poolside, blood swirling into the chlorinated water while Gus knelt and screamed. He's been building toward revenge for 20 years. You, your chemistry, your 99%, you're a tool in a vendetta that predates you by decades. Gus doesn't die easy. He dies on the 4th floor of Casa Tranquila, a nursing home, when Hector Salamanca, wheelchair-bound, voiceless, communicating through a bell mounted on his armrest, detonates a pipe bomb strapped to his own wheelchair. Half of Gus's face is gone. He walks out of the room, straightens his tie, and collapses. Walt orchestrated the whole thing. And that vacuum opens again. Bigger this time. The super lab is gone. Walt and Jesse torch it, gasoline and thermite, the whole thing burning underground while the laundry staff evacuates upstairs. Gus's network is exposed. 11 of his former associates are sitting in prisons across New Mexico, and any one of them could talk. Walt hires Jack Welker's crew, white supremacists, neo-Nazis, men with swastika tattoos and military-grade weapons, to murder all 10 witnesses within a 2-minute window across 3 separate prisons. Shanked, stabbed, burned alive. 2 minutes. This is the Empire phase. Walt's not working for anyone now. He's the one at the top. He partners with Todd Alquist, Jack's nephew, a polite kid with dead eyes who shot a 14-year-old boy named Drew Sharp for witnessing a train robbery and then kept the kid's tarantula in a jar as a souvenir. They cook in houses tented for pest fumigation, operating under a company called Vamonos Pest, moving from site to site, never staying long enough to leave a trace. The methylamine comes from the train heist. 1,000 gallons siphoned from a tanker car in the desert, replaced gallon for gallon with water so the weight stays the same and nobody notices. The money comes in faster than you can spend it, faster than you can hide it. $80 million. Cash, stacked in a storage unit, then buried in 8 55-gallon drums in the desert, GPS coordinates scratched onto a lottery ticket taped to the refrigerator. Saul Goodman, criminal lawyer, emphasis on criminal, set up the laundering infrastructure. The A1A car wash, purchased for $800,000 from a stubborn owner named Bogdan Wolinets after Skylar White faked an environmental inspection to scare him into selling. The car wash processes the cash, makes it look like an unusually successful quarter for a business that washes Subarus and Toyotas in a strip mall parking lot. But $80 million doesn't make you safe. It makes you a target. Hank finds a book of Walt Whitman poetry, leaves of grass, sitting on the toilet tank in the White family bathroom. Inside the cover, a handwritten inscription. To my other favorite WWWW, it's an honor working with you. Fondly, GB. Gail Bodeker's handwriting. Hank recognizes it from the evidence file he's been carrying around for months. And right there, on the toilet, mid-Sunday dinner, the whole thing unravels. Every barbecue. Every birthday. Every time Hank asked Walt for advice, and Walt smiled and said nothing useful. All of it recontextualized in one paralyzing second. The confrontation happens in Walt's garage. Hank says, "I don't know who you are. I don't even know who I'm talking to." Walt says, "If that's true, if you don't know who I am, then maybe your best course would be to tread lightly." And the door is closed. There is no version of this where both men survive. Hank dies in the desert. Shot by Jack Welker, execution style, while Walt screams and begs on his knees. They take 70 million of the 80, leave Walt a single barrel, maybe 10 or 11 million, and drive away. Jesse is dragged from beneath a car, face bruised, wrists bound, taken to the compound, and chained to a dog run above a concrete pit. He cooks for them. 96% purity under duress. Todd watches him through the cage bars with that blank, courteous expression and brings him ice cream when the batch comes out clean. Andrea Cantillo, Jesse's girlfriend, Tomas's sister, is shot on her front porch by Todd as punishment when Jesse tries to escape. She opens her door and Todd shoots her in the back of the head while Jesse watches from the car, screaming into a gag. Her son Brock is inside. He's 6 years old, the same kid Walt poisoned with Lily of the Valley berries to manipulate Jesse into helping kill Gus. Everything connects. Every body connects to every other body. This is the top. This is what the top looks like. Walt disappears. A vacuum cleaner repairman named Ed Galbraith charges him $125,000 to vanish, gives him a new identity, ships him to a cabin in New Hampshire where he sits alone for months, growing a beard, watching his cancer eat him from the inside. His son won't take his money. His wife is hollowed out and hostile. His daughter won't remember him. He had $80 million, and now he has a barrel and a flannel shirt and a wedding ring that slides off his finger because he's lost so much weight. He goes back to Albuquerque one last time. Rigs an M60 machine gun in the trunk of a Cadillac, jury wired to a garage door opener, set on a rotating pivot. Finds Jack's compound, sits across from the man who murdered his brother-in-law and stole his money. Hits the button. The gun chews through the wall of the clubhouse. Kills most of the crew in seconds. Jesse strangles Todd with a chain of his own handcuffs. Walt picks up a pistol and offers it to Jesse. "Do it," he says. Jesse looks at him. The man who destroyed his life, who watched Jane choke to death and did nothing, who poisoned a child, who let Andrea die. and says, "Do it yourself." Jesse drives away, screaming, crying, alive. Walt walks into the meth lab one last time, runs his fingers along the steel tanks, the tubing, the reflux condensers, leaves a bloody handprint on a stainless steel column. The police find him on the floor, dead, that faint expression still on his face. Not a smile. Something worse. Satisfaction. He made $80 million. He needed $737,000. The chemistry was never the hard part. Any competent chemist can synthesize methamphetamine. The hard part is the people. The hard part is that every rung of the ladder is a person who will eventually need to be killed, bought, buried, or betrayed. The hard part is that the ladder doesn't have a top. It just gets narrower and narrower until you're standing on a point so sharp it cuts through whatever's left of you. Every person who climbed it in this story is dead, imprisoned, or running. Combo, shot at 20 on a street corner. Tuco, shot by the DEA. Gus, half a face in a nursing home hallway. Hank, buried in the same desert where the money was. Jesse, driving north with nothing but scars and a set of stolen keys. And Walt, on the floor, in the lab, where he always wanted to be. The empire always collapses. The chemistry was never the problem. The problem was a man who was good at something and couldn't stop. Couldn't stop when he had enough. Couldn't stop when everyone around him was bleeding. Couldn't stop because stopping meant going back to being the person he was before. And that person was already dead the moment he said yes in the desert, standing in his underwear, cooking his first batch in a Winnebago while his partner threw up outside. He said it himself in the end. Standing in Skylar's kitchen, hollowed out, nothing left to lie about. I did it for me. I liked it. I was good at it. And I was alive. Gone.